name's Radical Russ, and I am the voice of Hempsters everywhere. I do the podcast for Normal, a daily audio stash where you can get interviews and the latest hemp headlines and all the news and some great music too. Check it out at stash.normal.org. If you just go to the normal.org, you can find it. I also have a talk radio show on Air America's XM satellite channel, the Russ Belville show on the weekends. And so I get to do a lot of these stories about our people. And I really do think of us as a people. You know, I think of us as a certain, you know, we're like the largest invisible minority in this country. You know, I have this theory that if all of a sudden anybody who had ever smoked marijuana, if their skin turned green, this country would look around and see all the green people and realize what a terrible injustice we've been doing to an entire subset, an entire culture of Americans. And one of the stories that I wanted to, you know, bring to you that I got to cover on the Daily Audio Stash and also on my radio show, I interviewed the best friend of a woman named Rachel Morningstar Hoffman. Has anyone heard of Rachel Morningstar Hoffman? A couple of you, a few. Let me tell you this sad story, because when I'm doing the talk radio show, a lot of times I get people that'll say, you know, why are you concentrating on marijuana? You know, there's so much more important things to concentrate on. I mean, we got war in Iraq and peak oil and global starvation and AIDS. Why do you concentrate on marijuana? I like one of the things that Rick Steves said about this, how he said, it's easy to stand up to fight AIDS. It's easy to stand up to fight cancer. Standing up to fight prohibition is tough. You stand up to fight prohibition, you could lose your job, you could lose your license, you could lose the respect of your community. So that's why I stand up for marijuana, is because there's not a whole lot of people standing up for it. They're afraid to. And so the story of Rachel Morningstar Hoffman is one of the ones that reminds me why I do this and put in all this time and energy and effort. Rachel Hoffman was a 23-year-old college student at the University of Florida. She just recently graduated, and she was a lot like me when I was a 20-something, in that I smoked weed. Y'all smoke weed? A few of you, maybe a couple? Yeah. So you know how it is. It's a black market, so it's expensive. And you're a college student. You're living on top ramen. And so like other college students, they get friends together and go in on a larger amount, right? You've done that. You've been there, right? The economics of it all. So Rachel was the kind of girl who was, you know, in the less than a quarter-pound level type of person, you know, a weed smoker who'd get some for her friends, share with friends, and so on. Well, in Florida, she got caught. She got caught with marijuana twice. Now, first time she gets caught, the cops, you know, warn her, and she gets the ticket and all that. Second time she gets caught, they go to her house, and they got a search warrant, and they found out that she had 5 ounces of marijuana, and she had 3 ecstasy pills, which is a felony. Both are felonies in Florida. So the cops, the Tallahassee Police Department said, okay, look, little girl, you're going to prison for 4 years, unless you help us. And this is what happens in this war on marijuana. You know how it works. They want to get the bigger fish. The cops want to use you to snitch. So they turned to Rachel and they said, we want you to turn in your friends, the people that you were dealing weed to. And she said, no, I'm not going to turn in my friends. You know, good for her, right? They said, all right, well, here's another way we could do this. If you don't want to go to prison for 4 years, you help us catch these other 2 drug dealers we're going after. But don't tell your lawyer. Don't tell your folks. Don't tell the district attorney. The cops wanted to do this in secret because they knew if they'd asked the lawyers or the attorneys, they'd have said, no freaking way are you going to do this. But Rachel, she is 23. She doesn't know any better. She doesn't want to go to prison for 4 years. That's a life sentence when you're a 23-year-old person. So she agrees to help the police out, the Tallahassee police. What they set up for her was a controlled drug buy. They put her as an undercover buy, wearing a wire, right? So she's undercover, wearing a wire. She's got no training in this kind of stuff. They give her $13,000 in cash. They send her to these 2 drug dealers who have known felony records, violent guys that she'd never met before in her life. $13,000 to go buy 1,500 ecstasy pills, 2 ounces of cocaine, and a handgun. They send this 23-year-old college student who basically does a little weed with her friends, doesn't do any hard drugs, never met these guys before in her life, has no training in undercover operations, to go with $13,000, 1,500 ecstasy pills, 2 ounces of cocaine, and a handgun. And the police say, don't worry, we got you covered. We can hear the wire. We'll keep watching you. Everything will be okay. Well, guess what? Everything was not okay. She goes out to make the controlled buy. The two drug dealers, you think they might have figured out something was up. You think when the 23-year-old girl, the girl next door, you know, sweet, fresh-faced girl they've never met before, all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of nowhere, 13 grand, 1,500 ecstasy pills, 2 ounces of coke, and a handgun? Yeah, they figured it out all right. They took her away from the controlled buy, they led her down an old country road in Florida, and they shot her in the back of the head. Shot her in the back of the head. Here's where it gets worse. The cops lost track of her for 36 hours, and that's how she died. So that's why I do this, and I want to thank you all for coming out to Hempfest, and remember, people like Rachel Morningstar Hoffman, the real victims of this war on drugs, it's got to end now. We are the generation that's going to do it. Peace out. Radical Russ out. Thank you so much.
Russ, thank you so much.